could cut a lot of what I had. For some reason, I just doubled the time that Dennis told me that we would have together. And I don't know whether I should try to just cut all of this in half or not. But is it all right if we just go on? Okay. Well, because I do want time for us to be able to talk together if you have some things that, some concerns that you'd like to bring up. But if we could just all stay together rather than getting into some small groups, then maybe we will have the time. Johnny, should we do the truth song? This is one of those songs that I feel really both for children and adults. What if I were very, very sad and all I did was smile? I wonder after a while what might become of my sadness. What if I were very, very angry and all I did was sit and never think about it? What might become of my anger? Where would they go and what would they do if I couldn't let them out? Maybe I'd fall, maybe get sick or doubt. But what if I could know the truth and say just how I feel? I think I'd learn a lot that's real about freedom. I'm learning to sing a sad song when I'm sad. I'm learning to say I'm angry when I'm very mad. I'm learning to shout, I'm getting it out, I'm happy, learning exactly how I feel inside of me. I'm learning to know the truth. I'm learning to tell the truth. Discovering truth will make me free. And it took me a long time to write that song. I thought of, well, thank you. I really had thought about it for years and years, and it came to me ever so slowly that the best way to know the truth was to begin by trusting what my inner truth was and trying to share it. Not right away, but only after I had worked hard at understanding it. For instance, I waited a long time before I felt I was ready to produce a program about death. It turned out to be a very personal expression once I did do it. Much of the creative drive came, I'm sure, from the grief which I dealt with for a long time after our poetry lady, Emily Jacobson, died. What a wonderful person she was. And what a superb sport. She worked with us until a few weeks before she died, and she often quoted the poem, "If you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a shrub in the valley, but be the best little shrub by the side of the rill. If you can't be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, then just be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are." She used to say that on the program, and she lived that as we would work together. That's the toughest kind of a friend to lose, as you well know. After the program aired, in which I did talk about death, I learned from the widow of an astronaut that she and her daughters had watched that program together in Houston. And afterwards, for the first time since their dad had been killed, the girls were able to talk with their mother about their dad's death. I think John Muller, in one of his workshops, will be using parts of that program, so I won't show it now. But I did want you to know that a lot of what I've tried material for programs. There's really nothing in the experience of our own lives that cannot become resources for our programming, provided that we can have a clear understanding of it ourselves. Some of my richest experiences have come out of the most painful times, times that were the hardest to believe that they could ever turn into anything positive. Honesty seems to have no age boundaries, and through the years of producing The Neighborhood, we heard from so many adults who said they watched our programs long after their children had gone. I'm sure that there were many reasons for this, not the least of which was the pleasure of the memory of earlier times. But we decided to try to make some programs for older people, for adults. And like the underlying theme of The Neighborhood, I wanted the bedrock of this series to be the fact that each person in the world makes a difference. Old friends, new friends, we call it. We've made 7 programs in the first season, and I'd like to show you parts of some of them. Naturally, I've been interested in fathers and sons. I've been both. I've also been interested in songwriting ever since I was very young. So for the first Old Friends, New Friends program, I visited Hoagy Carmichael, the songwriter, and father of Hoagy Carmichael, the fly rod maker. The part I'd like to show you from that particular program shows the sincerity of communication which young Hoagy shared with me. He had obviously thought long and hard about his relationship with his famous father.
Lazy bones, sleeping in the sun. How you expect to get your day's work done? Oh, you never get your day's work done. Sleeping in the noonday sun. Oh, rocking chair, get it. Judgment Day shall change to my rocking. And now he's bobbing the piano just to raise the price of a ticket to the land of the free. Well, he say his home's in Frisco where they send the rice, but he's really in Tennessee. Up a lazy river where the old mill run meets lazy, lazy river in the noonday sun.
What's it mean to you to be the son of a successful father?
That person, that his life is like a corridor, long corridor with doors in it. And you are behind one of those doors, and other people are behind one of those doors, and other parts of his life, a sport or a hobby. And that always at the end of that corridor is his music or his baseball career, whatever it is. And every once in a while, that person, my father, comes in and opens up my door and does something with me. And opens up other doors and does something with other people. But you know that the main event, the big thing in his life, is whatever is at the end of that corridor, to use that metaphor. And that is, that is a truth that doesn't always feel good. I remember being very disappointed I remember being disappointed, oh gosh, I loved baseball, and I worked hard at baseball. I was never very good at it, but I really worked hard at it. And I was a pitcher, and I couldn't get Dad to come to a game. The game that he did come finally to see me at, I couldn't pitch that day for whatever reason, I don't remember. And Dad did come to the game, and I was in for 2 innings or something, and I was disappointed because I wanted Dad to see me at my best.
Everybody does.
Sure. And I wasn't at my best, and I wasn't even at my semi-best for very long because the regular right fielder came in as he should have. There was something happened. I missed something or did something wrong.
The story about the baseball game reminds me of the soapbox derby that you both spent so much time getting that car ready, and then is it true that he wasn't able to come or something?
No, he wasn't able to come, and I knew that he wasn't going to be able to come to that. I felt very strong ties with Dad during that period because we had worked together on something that was very important to me and equally as important to Dad in terms of the relationship the two of us had. He worked hard on it because that was his project also. There's no question about that. And a lot of the inventions, as he calls them, were just that, And that's whether you invent a new lyric or invent a new break, you're inventing, and you're using your head and your hands, But I've always had a feeling that if it's not something that he's directly involved in, like my soapbox derby work, that Dad was too busy with other things.
But when he sees you working with your fly rods, how does he react to
Well,
that?
he hasn't seen that.
Oh, he hasn't?
No. I can't get him to come east and spend a weekend in Vermont with me or anything because he's settled in what he does, and he doesn't want to travel, and but he will travel to go to the Olympics, I'm telling you without telling you that I think it has to be right up his alley.
I have some of the same feelings about my father that you do about yours. And I wonder if everybody doesn't. I know that I agonized a great deal about it for a long time. My father was too busy. He would take on one job after the next, and I'd think there's no time for me. And yet, the older I get, the more I realize that Dad really did give me a great deal.
And the way you begin to understand that is through creativity and to not be afraid of it. That's really what I'm trying to say. To not be afraid of the fact that you too can create something from nothing.
Fred,
Yeah?
I've got one here.
You
He's laying down. Yeah, he's laying down the bottom right now.
Can I help you?
Yeah, you sure can. I'm gonna work him over toward here. Get my net. Where the heck?
Here it is.
Oh, you have it. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll work him up. And let him get, oop, there he goes.
Did you lose him?
No, he's on. He's still there. Oh, that's fun to catch one early in the season. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, now reach your net down there, then I'll bring him right up next to us. If I can. There he is. I'll put the net underneath him and then bring the net straight up.
Hey, that's nice.
Nice rainbow trout. That is very nice. Why don't you catch one?
I'll try.
Let's go. That's right. That's right. Good.
He's flapping around.
Oh, he's flapping around. He's not through yet. You know, one of the things that is wonderful about this business of fishing is that you get to make the flies yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make a rod and you catch a fish on a rod you've made,
And the fly that you've made.
it's a wonderful feeling. It's just a wonderful feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a wonderful feeling.
Fork in the road, mine leads up the hill. Jack takes the road that leads to the mill. Jack has my compass, I have his knife. Jack swore and I swore, friendship for life. See you tomorrow, see you tomorrow. Jack swore and I swore, friendship for life. Remember that?
I love it.
A different kind of relationship is evident in the program we did with Milton Berle and Joe Restivo, two comedians, one established and one just starting out in his career. Mr. Berle did not meet Joe Restivo, but watched a videotape of Joe's nightclub act and gave his comments about it. We played the comments to Joe, and I'd just like you to see what Joe's reaction to them was, and also a little about what Mr. Berle was saying after that.
Never borrow.
You know, when I was in college, I went to New York to talk with a songwriter whom I had admired very much. And I took him my 4 or 5 songs that I had written, and I thought he'd certainly introduce me to Tin Pan Alley, and that was my beginning of my career. And after I played him my songs, he said, "You have very nice songs. Come back when you have a barrel full." Well, some people, you know, that would discourage so that they'd never write another song. But it egged me on. And I went back to him after I had a barrel full. You'll have a barrel full of engagements.
I would like to meet with Milton, you know, just autograph the book. That'd be nice. When you've been in the business for 50 years, or 60 years he's been, right? He's 68, I guess. And started when he was 4 or something. I would assume you know. I would assume you know.
Show business is a very funny business, except when you're doing a comedy show. Then it isn't so funny. Now, I have no beefs about being a success and enjoying it when I was rolling. But with all the work that I had to do, I didn't have enough time, Fred, really, to enjoy it. the payoff was not big enough for all I've gone through. Though I'm very, very secure, I'm very happy, got a wonderful wife, got a wonderful family, got 2 great grandchildren, but there's always that one little emptiness. So that's the clown with the facade. So today you caught the clown with his hands down.
And the beginning of the day was very, very different from that. Very different. He came down the stairway of his home with just one joke after another, looking for people to be laughing at him every minute. And that was a day of revelation for me. I listened as hard as I knew how that day. Well, as you may have noticed, in each of those programs, as I was talking with the guests, I shared some of my life with them. I tried to help them realize that it wasn't a question and answer period, my asking the questions and their giving the answers. After all, the host on a program is the person who keeps coming back each week. And if our mail is any indication of the norm, television viewers want to know about those of us who are visiting with them in their homes. This is a very personal medium. Now, I think at one time or another in everybody's life, we have the fantasy that we are adopted. There are many different reasons for such a fantasy, not the least of which is the fact that everyone wants to be important, and having different, highly exalted natural parents somewhere in our past adds an extra measure of luster to who we are. At any rate, I've always been interested in adoption, as well as children who have been abandoned, which probably stems from another universal fear of being abandoned ourselves. When I heard of the work of Father William Wasson and his Nuestros Pequeños Hermanos, I was determined to get to know him. For those of you who may not have heard of him, Bill Wasson is an American priest who went to Mexico 25 years ago and in the meantime has adopted 4,000 children. We produced one whole program about the Pequeños, which we entitled Padre. And the following week, we showed a short recap of it in order to include a visit with Helen Hayes, who is one of Father Wasson's great supporters. And as the last little bit of Old Friends, New Friends, I'd like you to see that part. Each person makes a difference in this world. The faces of those young people clearly reflect the influence of the many faithful men and women who helped Father Wasson realize his dream. Nobody brings up a child single-handedly. A woman who is very important to what Father Wasson has been able to achieve is Helen Hayes, the well-loved First Lady of the American Theater. Father Wasson and I talked with her at her home in Mexico. I, of course, wanted to know about how you first met Father Wasson and all of your relationships.
Well, that was a real delightful story, I think. To me, it seems delightful. I was down here the first Christmas after my husband had died. My son and I were here to get us over that unhappy event. Christmas after, when you've had a great loss is hard to take. So we were here, and I wanted to go back into the church, the Catholic Church, and I was getting some instruction from Father Wasson. And our first meeting was in the sacristy of the church over there, San Francisco, where he was preaching. You weren't pastor of that church, you just preached
Chaplain.
there.
I was chaplain,
oh,
yes.
So anyhow, we got locked in. by the sacristan. He locked us in for the night. And I remember in this beautiful old church, it's kind of spooky, and Father was very bright and lively about it all. Banged on doors, couldn't get any answer, and finally said to me, "There's only one thing about this place that might upset you. It's all right with me," he said, "we can just stay here all night till they come in the morning. But the bats come in. This is..." He's a devil, you know. The bats didn't come in. But we got out. He took me up the stairs back of the altar, past the, through the priest quarters, yes, where I startled the priest no end. But that was our first meeting. It had a kind of a low comedy element, but it's been all high beauty ever since.
You've been such a help to the Pequeñas.
They've been such a help to me. I've made great friends out of them. I now have a little daughter there, foster daughter, Maura, M-A-U-R-A. It's another spelling for Maria. And one takes great pride in these children because they all turn out so well. I wish I could get my granddaughter to the Pequeñas for just a couple of years. She's a darling, but she doesn't know how to keep her room tidy. And they do.
I've often wondered about your great interest in the Pequeñas and whether it may have had some roots in your loss of Mary.
I don't know. That's hard to define. I just don't know. I only know that my heart went out to them. I was so grateful for meeting them. At that time, they were all of 80, weren't they, Father?
I'm always interested in the roots.
Well, the roots are that I got exposed to the quiet doers of good in the world, and they're very quiet. They don't make a big racket the way the evil people do. But one sees them across the front pages. One can't escape the evil ones. But the quiet ones are rather neglected and ignored, the quiet, good people. And I got in with them through my work for the Polio Foundation. And once I'd walked into that, I saw that I'd walked into a world of great beauty and people who had learned how to find beauty in life, which is what I guess a lot of us and most of us are looking for. I guess everybody looks for that.
Have you ever helped any of them with theater or with acting?
No, I haven't helped any because I think Father had ordered me out of the place if I ever let any of his children into the profession. But because he wants them to be teachers and doctors, and he certainly doesn't want them to be vagabonds, as we actors are. For years, I've been using the theater to further the other work. I like to be famous because that makes me useful to Father Wasson. Isn't that terrible?
I think it's wonderful.
Huh?
I think it's wonderful.
So I keep on doing a movie here and a movie there to keep my fame bright, so I can use it for my hospital and when I want to raise funds. And if my name gets forgotten, then I haven't anything with which to sell the things I want to sell. So here I go, doing another movie next week.
What's it going to be about?
Oh, I like this one. This is something else that I'm very wrapped up in. This picture is about two elderly people who, through circumstances and this strange state of mind of people about the elderly, are being pulled apart. I want to help free the aged, of which I am one, of the terrible constriction of being old. We're constricted by our age, and people think of us as different from other people, and we're not. We're still the same inside. I feel 30 in here, and I never realize until I can foolishly take out a mirror in the sunlight that there's a great difference between how I feel in here and how I look out there. We don't even like to say elderly. We say senior citizens and things like that because it has a bad connotation. It shouldn't have. It means wisdom. It means richness of memory and experience.
You have some plans for older people, older than Pequeñas.
That's right, Fred. We have a
This, but I know it's not always possible, but I feel that when broadcasting can reflect the person of the communicator, it truly enhances the value of the medium. And when the communicator has done his or her best to understand self and other, and then commits the work to be used by the Holy Spirit, he or she can be confident that the surprises of life will be many. I'd like to close with a song which we use at most of our neighborhood programs, and I'd like to dedicate it to all of you who work so hard in the field of Christian broadcasting. I'm glad to be able to call you friends. It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling. The feeling you know that we're friends. Thank you all very much for today.
We'd like now.
Was everyone able to hear that question? Was about how there's been a lot of talk about how television per se is not good for children and families. Just the very fact of the medium being in the homes. And I have real difficulty with that. I don't watch a lot of television myself, and I think that most people watch too much, and the children watch too much. And if anything that I do keeps kids away from play, I'm sorry that I do it. But I got into television that senior year in college. I came home at Easter time, and I saw some television for kids in which people were throwing pies, and it just seemed to be so demeaning that I thought, now, I really would like to try to do something about this. And so that's why I went to New York after college. There's been a lot of research, and often research comes out with what the researcher wants it to come out with, you know. And I wish I could speak more definitively about this. I think that when kids watch 5 and 6 hours a day, it really doesn't matter how pro-social that television happens to be if it takes away from their actual play, which, as you know, is so exceedingly important in our development. So we must try to give alternatives, but as we do that, for instance, if there were a network for children in which all of the programs were healthily produced programs for children, I still think it would be a disaster for kids to watch all day long. There is something, I mean, we've been together just a little while, but there is something, I hope, that you know about me that you would never know in years and years to come simply watching the television. Whenever we get to the stage that people think that some technology is going to take the place of human relationships, then we're finished. Because then it won't matter whether people press the red button or not. Now it matters because we care. We care for each other. Does that say anything to me? Okay. Yes.
I was just interested to know what type of responses you heard from people after that part of your Christmas program that was non-divisive and such.
I was fascinated by the response to that program. At least 50% of the people who wrote to us were from the Jewish faith. And they said, in the middle of a Christmas special, for you to mention your friends who celebrated Hanukkah was a most, how did many other people, a most freeing experience for our kids. Our kids didn't know what your persuasion was as far as religious belief. They felt that you loved them. And they also felt that many programs which had to do solely with Christmas excluded them. And I was just dumbfounded with the response to that special. In fact, there were so many people who wrote to the Sears Foundation about that particular program that they called me and asked if we would make this springtime special, which we've just been taping. The foundation called me. They said that they had never had such goodwill expressed to them. And what that says to me is that we as viewers really do have a say if we communicate to the people who are considered the sponsors. There are a lot of companies that got very, very upset by the kinds of things, as you know, the kinds of things that PTA and some of the others were bringing forth. And I think that's our only chance. Of course, it's the numbers that many of the sponsors are concerned about. But I went to a meeting in which members of the division, I guess it was, the advertising division for the Ford Motor Company, every one of them said, you know, we have a dictum from the top which says that we must never be involved in programs which are highly violent and so forth. And they said, we don't dare get into any of those, no matter what the ratings are. And so you can see how a person can make a great difference. It must be Henry Ford himself who said, none of it. No, people can make a great difference if they allow themselves to be heard.
What's next for Mr. Rogers? What are you interested in exploring on television now? Where do you see yourself going?
Well, I don't know. As we were talking about last night, you know, I'm interested in radio as well. So many people come up to me and say, I thought it was you when I saw you, but I knew it was you when I heard your voice. And maybe my relationship with Dennis helps me to understand better about the medium of radio. And I think that it's changing. I think that when we meet together 10 years from now, it'll be interesting to know what's happened with the different media, especially when there are 80 television channels in each city. It's fun to have been in on the beginning, you know, of this business. I hope that I live long enough to see what's coming out of all of it. I hope it isn't all selfish.
I really appreciate your sharing of your experiences and the contacts you've had and so on. I'm wondering, what is your own opinion, and also what have you learned from the researchers and the consultants you've been with concerning, is there a place in children's television for a direct reference to God or to Jesus?
Well, as you heard Margaret say on that little audio cassette. I've struggled long and hard with that question. And I think the answer to your question is yes. And as time goes on and there are more and more channels, I think that there'll be certain channels that will be designated for Christian broadcasting, perhaps. Who knows? You might get one in your own city. Well, it seems to me exceedingly appropriate to address yourself to theological issues. Now, as someone who wears the hat of a person in the field of child development, I'm concerned about what I talked about as far as omnipotence is concerned. I'm worried about preschool children who really need to know what the boundaries of their selves are. In other words, there isn't anybody who knows what's beyond the skin. And a child needs to firmly be able to believe that and to understand that. And I think before he or she begins to understand about God or about some being who does know all, see all, hear all. I'll never forget hearing a sermon a long time ago entitled, "He Does Not Read His Children's Mail." And it impressed me so as such a helpful thing that God could be so powerful that he could limit himself. And I guess this is the kind of God that I believe in, that he cares so much about who I am, that he respects that I would bring to him what I felt I could at that moment. You've touched a deep reservoir, and as you can imagine, I've worked long and hard at this. In the early days, we always sang a song called "Good Night God" to end our Friday program. You know, we did 8 years of a daily program live. The first 3 years, it was an hour in length, and the rest of the years, it was a half hour. And, you know, that's when I was starting to learn more and more about kids. And it started out, it was just supposed to be a program in which we would introduce films, free films that I would get from all over the country. We had a weekly budget of $150 for five hours of programs. We would go out and buy all of our own props, and that $150 was to be used for Josie's salary, which was $75 a week, and my salary, which was $75 a week. And we would walk into the studio and do an hour of television. Well, little by little, those free films would break. And we couldn't go to black for all of that time, and so I'd dig into my puppet bag and push out a puppet. And that's how The King and Daniel Tiger was given to us the night before we went on the air as a present by Mrs. Dorothy Daniel, who was the first general manager of our station. And so we called the puppet Daniel in honor of her. But the only thing he said in the first program was, "Josie, it's 5:03 and Columbus discovered America in 1492. That was all. But who knows why all of those films started to break, you know? So we just used what time we had. And the surprise, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Could you tell me a little about how you prepare for an interview like the one you had with Helen Hayes? Or do you prepare for them?
Yeah, I pray a lot. We had visited with her the time before. I've been down to Cuernavaca 3 different times, and so I had the luxury of meeting her and knowing about her work before we had to do this, which was not the case with Milton Berle. I didn't want to do the Berle program, and so I had that to take with me and deal with before I went to do it. Our producer wanted very much to do it, and so I went along with him, and I think we made of it about the most that we could have made with it. Mr. Berle did not want to see Joe Restivo, and so we had to make a tape of him and his nightclub act and show it, and I wanted to get them together somehow. But I saw how somebody like Milton Berle hurts too, and maybe you could hear him say that all that he had gotten was not big enough payoff for him, and it seems to me that that's sad to come to that point in his life and think that I guess maybe the applause wasn't loud enough. And if that's all you're looking for, it never will be loud enough. That's not a good answer to your question, but it's in very different ways that people prepare for interviews. I really feel sorry for those who have to do daily interviews with people and all they know are the biographical materials that come through the mail or the book that person might have written. Nevertheless, I think somebody will tell you, if you're willing to listen, what's underneath his skin, if it happens to be the day that he wants to talk about it. But there is no way to force somebody into sharing with you. All you can do is be yourself. As Sister Marty told me before we started today, we're all just instruments, just like a microphone is instrument. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but when it doesn't work, you don't kick it.
Is this on? Here? I think most of us who work in television and deal with issues on a regular basis realize that reasonable men can differ on certain kinds of points. And I was most interested in what you showed us today, especially in connection with your concept of omnipotence and inner self, the secrecy, the privacy, the inner privacy of self, and especially how you had Daniel Tiger respond to Santa Claus. Now, has there ever been a situation developed in your programming where you've taken a particular theological or sociological stand, such as the one that you took in that little excerpt you showed us, and found that people from a more fundamental background really resented the kind of presentation in which the position you took? Because I can see people saying, look, you're creating a real problem for me in terms of disciplining my kids and the kind of approach to which I want my children to understand their responsibilities to family and society and to God.
Yes, absolutely. We had some response to that particular program by people who had not seen the program. They had simply read about it, and they thought that by what they read that I was trying to debunk Santa Claus. And I felt that I was doing the opposite. I was trying to make him seem like somebody who really did care for the kids. But we did have some irate letters, particularly from Cleveland. I don't know whether you remember the dialogue that went on about that program. It was horrendous, but it was because the man who wrote I guess he was the television editor, wrote that I was trying to debunk Santa Claus. And so the station wouldn't show the program. They showed it at midnight, I believe. And I felt bad about that controversy because I can deal with anybody who cares to listen, but I can't if people are just making assumptions that have no base. But I'm sure that there are a lot of people in this country who don't like what I do, just like there would be a lot of people who wouldn't like what you might produce. But that doesn't say to me that it has any less value. I just have to be who I am. I've felt that always from the beginning. I think Johnny can vouch for that. You know, that there's never been a time when I'm just not an actor, you know. I just have to be the person that I am. Otherwise, I don't think that I could have existed in this medium for so long. It can eat up so much of who people are. At least I've always felt that I know a lot of people in television who, when they're away from the screen, they're very different from who they are. Don't you? I think that's sad, too, because what that must say is that they feel that they can't be accepted as they are. One of the first songs that Josie and I ever wrote together was a song called I Like You As You Are. I remember Emily Jacobson, she was wonderful to us. Josie wanted to call it I Like You Are. And I said, Josie, that's not correct English, and I won't write the music for it if that's what we call it. And so she bent to my changing it to I Like You As You Are. And Emily Jacobson always stood up for that. You know, she was one of those people who would say to you, these were the days, you know, when nobody ever saw me. Those first 8 years, I was always behind the set, poking out the puppets and doing the organ and all. And Emily would say to me, Fred, just remember that if you weren't there, it would be like doing Hamlet without the Prince of Denmark. Don't you have people in your lives who just think you're greater than you are? I think it's what... Yes. Everybody hear that? I'd like to know some of your ideas. I can't begin to know. But I do know that we have a voice. I know that when Old Friends started in Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Presbytery sent around messages to all of the pastors in our area, and they were very helpful in alerting their people to the beginning of this series. And for the month that it was on, it was the highest rated program in Pittsburgh at that particular time. And I firmly believe that it had to do with the churches being behind it. Because in many other cities, it was scheduled at terrible hours, I wonder how many people here knew that we even did such a short series of Old Friends, New Friends. Well, isolated cities did somewhat of a job with it, but I'm just saying that if the churches really care and get behind something, they can make a difference. Now, as far as children's programming, or as far as that's concerned, it's the sponsors who are going to ultimately make the decisions on commercial television. There's a lot of talk about no commercials to be put on children's television at all. I frankly don't think that will happen. I think there's just too much revenue that comes from those times. Now, the latest suggestion is that commercials be clustered at the beginnings, at the middles, and at the ends, so that there aren't that many interruptions. One of my great concerns about television for children is the fragmentation of the programs. Ever since Laugh-In, that kind of format has been carried over into all kinds of broadcasting. And if we're to help kids develop some sort of a train of thought and some sort of continuity of thinking, how can all of these 1 and 2.5 minute segments in programs that are not related help them in that? I think that we can have some very interesting programs that have a beginning, a climax, and a conclusion. That is really one thing that concerns me a lot, is the fragmentation.